Time to make some picks for the Genesis Scottish Open here on the Golfbet Roundtable. A lot of great names in the field getting ready for the Open Championship next week. We have key stats, what you should be looking for making your picks this week. Should you be betting on the stars like Scotty and Rory, plus other best bets coming up at the Genesis Scottish Open? Will, we have a new face here to welcome on the Golfbet channels across the board, Greg DuCharme. So great to have you with us. He's a teaching pro. He's on podcasts. He does all of it. Greg, thanks so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. And you guys picked a good one because I think this trip over to the UK is one of my favorites in the whole schedule. I think it's fascinating to break down. And we get some links golf this week.
Coffee golf, 2 weeks of it for American audiences. Set those alarms, get ready to figure out your maybe afternoon nap schedule, adjust your kids' summer camp, whatever you got going on. We need to adjust because we're playing golf a little bit earlier this weekend.
What time do you guys wake up for the Open? I'm like a 2:30, 3 o'clock kind of guy.
Thursday, you got to stay up for the first
couple
of shots, and then maybe you can take a little rest and come back in as the first wave's finishing.
Yeah, you guys are crazy. I'm not getting up that early. I mean, I'm talking maybe 4 o'clock will be. That's plenty early for me. I don't need to see every single shot because I'm going to see plenty as the week rolls on.
Spoken like a true pro. Let's get into some of these odds of these top names on this board. Again, Scotty and Rory, Will, you mentioned it. They have not played in a lot of events together outside of the majors. I'm fascinated. The fact that Xander Schauffele is the third best odds, and the third best odds are 20-1.
Well, and I mean, this is a loaded field, Chris. You got a lot of star power. A ton of the top 10, top 20, top 50 in the world ranking are showing up at Renaissance Club this week. So it speaks to how much odds makers are respecting both Scotty and Rory, having won 6 times between them this year. So including a couple of majors, that part definitely makes sense. But even as you get into Morikawa and Ludwig and beyond that, there's guys that you're not going to be surprised if they end up with the trophy come Sunday.
It just becomes really difficult to beat that guy specifically who's at plus 360. And so it's really hard to bet on one of the other guys. I think looking at a Xander this year specifically, Tommy, Colin, these other players, it's a lot harder to separate them out. Where Scotty, any way you dice it, any statistic you look at, Scotty stands above the rest just every single week. His chances of winning makes it worth that number. So he should be at plus 360 in my opinion.
We live in a world now where Tommy Fleetwood has better odds than Colin Morikawa. That's just where we're at right now. Colin goes back to a region where he won the Open a couple of years ago. We had the stats team dig up the most fascinating numbers, Greg, for us this week of how winners have done at the Genesis Scottish Open the last 3 years. It's been a PGA Tour event, and you've done this research yourself. Hitting the fairway doesn't really mean that much. Winners hit the fairway less than 1% better than the field average has here the last 3 years, and when they were in the rough, they were way better than the field was, making birdie more than 2 times as much as the field was from the rough. So when you see the stat, how does that adjust the way you're picking players and how they hit the driver?
So when I look at these two statistics, it looks to me almost like what we see on a U.S. golf course, the typical PGA Tour schedule. Also what you might see at a links course like St. Andrews, because it says that distance is a lot more important, where it doesn't make a huge difference if you're in the fairway or not. What does make a big difference is what club are you coming out of the rough with. And you look at a Xander Schauffele, a Robert McIntyre, and a Rory McIlroy. They all have really high clubhead speeds, and if they're coming out of the rough, they're likely coming out of the rough with a lot less club than some of the shorter hitters who may find the fairway. So both of these numbers speak distance to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to last year when Robert McIntyre got that fortuitous drop on, 16, and he's hitting that shot out of the rough, and it really turned the tide for him to be able to capitalize on a wayward drive. But Greg, to your point, for me, what club they're hitting out of the rough goes back to what club they're able to hit off the tee. And I'm looking at the weather forecast, and this course has ranged from a winning score of 7 or 8 under par all the way up to 22 under par. And this week, I think we're going to get the low scores because the winds are not really in the forecast. We're looking at 10, 15 mile an hour. You're not going to get that crazy weather band that we've seen often come through, whether it's at the Scottish Open or at the Open. It seems like this week is going to be a little bit more docile, a little bit more calm, and so that lends me to your point of leaning on the big hitters, because you're probably going to be able to just rip it a little bit more with driver than you would if you had a 20-mile-an-hour crosswind trying to navigate.
So you're going distance over accuracy. And I mean, look at Rory and look at Xander. They both won here, how far they hit the ball. Here's our next fascinating stat, Greg. Tell me what you make of this. Last year, Renaissance was the 4th longest proximity to the hole once players hit their approach shot on the green of any course on the PGA Tour last year, which means your birdie putts are a very long ways away. And players were not making a very good distance of putts on this course last year either. What does this number mean to you about who you're picking?
Yeah, both of those were, I mean, average distance of putts made, this was the most difficult on the PGA Tour the last 2 years. And it actually had the longest proximity in 2023 as well. So this isn't just a one-year kind of a deal. It's something that we have seen at the Renaissance Club, and I think that comes from the length of the approach shots. 70% of the approach shots come from outside of 150 yards. 25% come from outside of 200 yards, and it's no coincidence to me that looking at the last 3 winners, they all entered this week at the Scottish Open inside the top 22 from outside of 200 yards. When it comes to proximity. So, you're looking at a really long proximity that goes up as you get farther away from the hole. And I think that presents a really nice advantage for players who are exceptional long iron players this week.
You think links golf and you think, bigger green surfaces and that part with the long proximity makes sense to me. It's a little surprising to see guys are struggling so much to hole putts in terms of total feet made, because you'd think that, the greens are obviously going to be a little bit slower along the coast than you would, get on a PGA Tour venue in the U.S. Sometimes it seems like they'd be a little bit easier, but these obviously have enough nooks and crannies to really keep these guys on their toes, even from close range.
Doesn't matter which course Scottie Scheffler is playing. He seems to adapt to whatever is thrown at him. You could argue that links golf, whether you call this links golf or not, has been his downfall, not his strong suit. So what we're going to do is do a Scottie Scheffler parlay in the top 10, a DraftKings Scottie Scheffler top 10 parlay. Pick Scottie Scheffler, Greg. This is our rules here this week, when we do this every week, to do a top 10 and pick one other player to get a top 10 with. I'm going to give you 4 options. Scheffler top 10 with Rory McIlroy, Colin Morikawa, Robert McIntyre, the defending champ, or Ludwig Åberg. Where does your eye go across this board?
My eye goes to Colin Morikawa first, which is fascinating to me. And we'll see what happens with he and Billy Foster. That could be very helpful, but you never know with Colin. Look, he says his swing feels a little off right now. He's not seeing the shot shape that he wants. But the truth is he's still beating Fields with his ball striking. And what I found to be really interesting about Colin Morikawa specifically is here at the Renaissance Club, in both of his previous 2 appearances here, he's gained strokes putting, which has been a weakness for him. So he's seen something on the greens here, and I think his ball striking, regardless of what he says, is still good enough to join Scottie inside that top 10.
Greg, you have not been around the block here to know exactly how much I have disembarked from the Colin Morikawa experience.
Top 10.
I wish you well on that front. I think Billy Foster is going to be a really interesting add to the bag, but it's just a couple weeks ago at the U.S. Open, he leads the field in strokes gained approach and strokes gained ball striking and finished T38. So
yes.
I'm not quite there. I'm going to ride with the defending champ. Give me Bobby Mack. I think that he's playing really well. Obviously, the runner-up finish at Oakmont, but that's he's had a good run of form the last few weeks. He's going to have the boost from the hometown crowds going back as the native son, the defending champion. Rory, as a former champion, it would make a ton of sense for him to be in the mix as well, but that's such a short price. I'm getting almost 3 times the value if I take Scottie with Bobby Mack. So I'm going to go there and take him with a little bit of an edge over Ludwig among those plus 500 options.
I'm starting to think that it's getting scary how much Will and I are agreeing now. Because, Greg, we've been doing this over and over. Some of it's been successful. A lot of it has not been. I agree with Bobby Mack as the guy that could be paired with Scottie Scheffler for a top 10, and I'm just going to go ahead and get to my best bet because it's also Will's best bet, which is also crazy. Tommy Fleetwood in the top 10. You guys, I was going to do a top 5 for plus 500. I feel almost good enough for a top 5 here, Greg. I like the fact that I think he's going to fuel off of that terrible finish that we saw at the Travelers. Going across the pond is great for him. He's so consistent right now. Not expecting him to win. Top 10 safe for me at 250. This screams to me that Tommy Fleetwood is ready to prove that he can stay on a leaderboard despite what just happened.
I think he can, for sure. His game is good enough to put him in this situation where we view him as a guy that can't win. The only reason we do that is because he's so good, right? And we feel like he should win. I ran some numbers on the best links players over the last 5 years, and that was just simply a combination of Scottish Open and Open Championship. When there were PGA Tour players, Tommy Fleetwood was number 2 on that list. That's ahead of Scotty Scheffler. That's ahead of Colin Morikawa. It's ahead of Robert McIntyre, only behind Xander Schauffele, who's won both of those events. So I think you guys are making a good choice.
I mean, Chris, you had a comment earlier about, a little bit of shock to see Tommy Fleetwood ahead of Morikawa on the odds board. I feel like that's right. I think there's a world where we maybe are underrating what Tommy Fleetwood is doing recently. He missed the cut last year at the Open at Royal Troon, and since then has exactly 2 finishes outside the top 25 anywhere in the world. Now, one of those was a missed cut at the U.S. Open in Oakmont last month, but man, he is playing some really, really consistent and solid golf. And again, we're going back to a place where he's finished T4 and T6 over the last 3 years. Next week, Royal Portrush, where he was in the final group, finished second behind Shane Lowry in 2019. There's a lot to like about this two-step of venues when it comes to Tommy Fleetwood and his course of finish.
And sorry, just one disclaimer to the viewer. Maybe don't go top 5. 5 to 1 sounds great, but stick safe. Stick safe for the 250. Go. Greg, I love how you like our best bet. What do you love about your best bet?
Well, my best bet is Matt Fitzpatrick for a top 20. Okay, so it's much safer than you guys. I would feel very comfortable pushing this to a top 10 as well. But this one's almost it's a near lock. Okay, I love the way Matt Fitzpatrick's trending. His ball striking has been getting very, very good lately. You're seeing a much better driving performances out of him. And the last 2 starts for him, his iron play has really started to spike. And we've been seeing this for about the last month or so. So I love what I'm seeing out of Matt Fitzpatrick. He excels. You may not expect this, but he excels from outside of 200 yards as well. He's 13th on the PGA Tour from outside of 200 yards. So while he's not the longest hitter, I think his long iron play can carry him to some success here at the Renaissance Club, which he's already had in the past as well.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a quiet spell for the former U.S. Open champion, but these feel like the types of events and venues that could bring out the best of him. He's one of those guys that's really been well documented in trying to pick up speed, clubhead speed, ball speed, and those are the longer approaches or are areas where it can definitely pay some dividends on links golf specifically.
It's a former U.S. Open champion kind of prop bet week for us because Will's got another top 20 former champ.
I mean, listen, I just respect the homework. He went to Royal Portrush this week. He said he wants to play before the crowds all get there. This guy has every shot in the bag. It has been a rough go for Justin Rose since that playoff loss to Rory McIlroy at the Masters. Hasn't really done a ton. But remember, he was also a runner-up last year at Royal Troon at the Open. A T4 when he was a teenager at Royal Birkdale at the Open. So his links golf acumen is very well documented, and I just feel like this is the type of event, even leading into next week, where the preparation and the understanding that he'll put into it is going to pay some dividends. And again, I only need a top 20 here, plus 320. This is a really good return. So I don't need him to win, but I do need him to show a little bit of form. And I think that he's got that veteran approach and savvy that they could really pay dividends over these next couple of weeks, but this week especially.
If he shoots a first round 65, Greg, I think like you expect him to do in most of these events, he should be good, right?
He's just a hard one to predict because if he does go shoot that first round 65, he'll hang around. He'll give you a real chance to win, but it can, and I've been on the wrong side of this as well. It can go the other way quick. So I respect the homework as well, and I respect the. Let's just put it this way: you get that number because he's a tough one to call.
Yeah, I mean the price is the price for a reason, right? It's because he's been, especially again since Augusta National, there really hasn't been a ton to look at. But I'm in trying to find that spark with the former world number 1. I think there's just a little bit extra upside this week and maybe into next week than there would be at a run-of-the-mill PGA Tour event.
You know, as we've been going through these stats and why we're picking who we're picking, Greg, the more I look at your winner, I'm already convinced, and you haven't even convinced me yet.
Yes, this is Victor Hovland, who I'm loving the way that he's playing. So one thing, Victor Hovland and all of his struggles before winning the Valspar, or I guess even during winning the Valspar, a lot of those struggles were with the driver. His iron play has been very good for a long period of time. He's gained strokes to the field in 12 straight weeks, which is extremely impressive. He's 10th on the PGA Tour from outside of 200 yards. He rates pretty highly in the links golf acumen metric as well. So I think Victor Hovland for me really checks all the boxes. And the thing that he's shown, aside from Scotty and Rory, more than anybody else, is the spike week ability, where he can go and he can beat the field by 10 strokes with just his iron play in a given week. He could do that with the putter as well. There's a lot of weapons that Victor Hovland has, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing for him heading into this week.
I mean, a former 54-hole leader at St. Andrews, right? So that speaks for itself in terms of what he can do at links golf. For me, with Havlin, the question mark is always going to be on and around the greens, and that short game especially. And I wonder, Greg, how much links golf is going to be the great equalizer, because you get in a sideways lie in a pot bunker and you can only do so much, right? And there are other opportunities on links courses, including this week's venue, where you have some shot creativity, but other times it's maybe more straightforward. Maybe you're putting from 10 yards off the green, things like that. So that's going to be the X factor for me as I look at Havlin and try and assess his upside for this week.
Yeah, strangely, you don't get a lot of those tight lie chip shots with a 60 around these links golf courses. So I view it completely as a positive for Victor Hovland. He, like he did at St. Andrews, which you bring up, Will, he putted every time he missed a green or drove it close enough. He pulled the putter out. And I think he can do the same or something similar here at the Renaissance Club this week.
Greg, don't feel bad. Will's very good at poking holes in my winners, which he gets right like 99.9% of the time. Poke a hole in this one because it's very controversial. Maybe we just need to get Justin Thomas off these really tough golf courses. Maybe he's missing cuts at majors, not doing well at Memorial. All these courses that are tough, we're seeing JT nowhere near the leaderboard. Let's bring him here. Let's remember his win he has this year. Let's remember his 6 other top 10s he has this year. JT he says he likes links golf. He hasn't statistically been a great links golf player. He did shoot 62 here last year, Will.
I was waiting for you to get to the 62 part.
And then he fell apart.
Where we're going to get there, because that's pretty much the only bright spot when it comes to Justin Thomas and the Renaissance Club. It's been a lot of sideways golf. Even if you look at his Open Championship record, it is, let's say, spotty. So I feel like there's definitely, he's a 2-time major champion, former world number 1. When it clicks in a big way. I mean, we saw him take the first round lead at the Open last year, I believe. So he has that potential. I just wonder, sustaining it for 2, 3, 4 straight days and trying to build on that for a guy. I will say it's easier for me to back Justin Thomas from an outright market, having got that win at the Heritage and breaking the drought. And so we're not talking about this 3 or 4 year victory drought with JT anymore, the likes of which we're talking about when we're assessing Patrick Cantlay or Colin Morikawa or certainly Tommy Fleetwood. So that helps in that department. I just feel like links golf and Justin Thomas haven't quite gotten along over the years, and I don't know if maybe this week is the one that they decide to reconcile.
Well, and his odds would be the same too, Greg. If he won 3 months ago or not, his odds would be the same. You'd be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I think that's true. Look, we remember Justin Thomas was on the wrong side of a draw at the Players Championship a couple years ago. The winds were howling. He shot 67, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's going to win the Open, or he's going to be a great Open player at some point." And we haven't seen it. Maybe this week with those calm winds that Will mentioned earlier, maybe that's a big advantage for Justin Thomas. Maybe it helps him. I don't know if I would necessarily think this, just looking at the odds boards myself. Maybe that helps him this week if we get in a shootout on links golf. But unfortunately, Chris, I got to side with Will here.
Respect the decision. All right, well, who is going to win the golf tournament?
Right, someone's got to win here. And I will say before I get into this, I feel like we've done the entire show without mentioning Xander Schauffele, the defending champion at the Open, a former champion at the GSO. So maybe we're just paving our way to a 3-shot win for the X-Man. But I'm going further down the board. Listen, we've had a couple of long shots the last 2 weeks on the PGA Tour. Ryan Fox is playing with as much or more momentum than anyone on tour, right? He's looking for his 3rd win in less than 3 months. And if the winds are down, he is one of those guys that will be able to lean on that advantage off the tee, hit a ton of drivers, and his approach play and putting both have really leveled up this season, and that's why he's been in the mix and has won twice on the PGA Tour. But again, the links golf specialist, vibe is definitely there. Having lost in the playoff at the Irish Open before, he's won the Dunhill Links, he's won the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth, which is not link style, but it is speaking to his ability on these top tier DP World Tour events. So listen, plus 6,500 for Foxy here. Again, I understand why Scotty Scheffler is sitting there at plus 360, but it's the value trickles down as you get deeper down the board. And now all of a sudden I'm north of 60 to 1 on Ryan Fox as a player that just for me has a lot of upside in addition to a lot of recent momentum and some win equity.
He has won more than Justin Thomas this year. That's one thing. He's also won more than
Victor Havlin.
Yes.
But the same as Brian Campbell. So
the same as Brian Campbell. Yep. More than Colin Morikawa, more than everybody else aside from Scotty and Rory that was on that board. So I think if it's not Scotty or Rory, it's a wise choice.
I saw the stat. It is 6 two-time winners or more this year, 2 or more wins this year, 6 guys. I went through 5 of them after Campbell won, and I completely forgot about Ryan Fox.
Yep.
Crazy how good this guy's been this year.
Yep.
Yeah, you might not have seen Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Greg. Hey, we enjoyed it with you this week. Go check out Greg. He's on the Second Cut podcast with Rick Gaiman. All those guys, teaching pro. What's your accolade here? Your top what under what? What is your little status there?
Golf Digest Best Young Teachers in America.
Okay.
Been on that list for quite some time now. Those guys have to be under 40. So that's the one there. You can also catch me on Sirius XM. I'm on A New Breed of Golf from 9 to 12 on PGA Tour radio as well.
He can help us
Good
make
stuff,
picks.
Greg. Thanks for hopping on.
He can help us make picks, and he can help our golf swing.
There you go.
That's right.